Hi, welcome back to the Marlborough Law podcast. I think this is number 5.
I think so.
Yeah, and it's the end of May, so thank you very much to everybody on LinkedIn or Facebook or clients who wished me happy birthday. Thanks for all the flowers and chocolates that you brought in. I didn't eat the chocolates, I just say Alex ate all the chocolates, but the flowers were lovely. Thank you very much. So today we're going to talk about a couple of topics. Last month, I was actually listening to Radio 4, don't be shocked, and they were just talking about Companies House, and the new regulations at Companies House are trying to basically crack down on companies that have been set up fraudulently. So do you want to just run over and just explain to the viewers, anybody who has done something wrong, beware, Companies House is after you?
I don't think it's quite that bad, but it's called the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act. Rolls off the tongue. And it's basically about trying to reform and make more transparent corporate transactions and how they're registered. So I'm sure we've all heard of Panama and how it's closed registers, this, that, and the other, and that's where all the money laundering goes on. Well, I think we've had a belated realisation that we're also a bit of a money laundering capital, and we also have Companies House, which has extensive number of companies which are not necessarily above board and or should not be in the register due to errors. So this little bit of legislation is coming out to try and give transparency and improve the entire sort of regime.
Because it's really easy to register a company, isn't it? You just go on there, check that the name isn't used by somebody else, put your details in, put some your address in, pay your £12 and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be your address.
Yeah.
Because they never checked.
Yeah.
Any old director can turn up with any old thing. And that's part of a new regime. But actually, for the first time ever, I mean, it sounds bizarre really, for a director and the office holder, which comes with quite a few powers, they're going to verify your ID, which I think is absolutely in line with money laundering and the way things are going. It's all about transparency. So the register is trying to get rid of some of the more unsavoury things regarding sort of hiding yourself and hiding behind wall after wall after wall. So it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to work out. What the Companies House have said, essentially, naturally, is that they're going to raise fees across the board in order to carry out their new due diligence from the rest of us. But what we get in return, essentially, is more sound of mind when we come to checking Companies House. There's going to be things like email confirmation of IDs, and just this general, much more sort of coherent policy around checking that directors are actually directors and so on and so forth. I'm sure all of us heard about various COVID sham companies appearing for the COVID loans and disappearing overnight.
On furlough, you mentioned furlough, didn't you?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I believe that they're checking on the email address. So you'll have to have an authorised email address as well, which was one of those situations which you can hide behind, as you rightly say, not only the home address but an email address, which allows for that.
Yeah.
It's some may say it's probably about 4 or 5 years too late. However, it's good to see. I'm sure most of us don't really have much of a problem. However, I have certainly dealt with clients who register company after company, and the name may be Bob Smith in one, Bob A. Smith in the other, Bob A.B. Smith, and the other one I've noted is quite a few people seem to have various dates of birth, which is interesting and rings alarm bells for money laundering.
Isn't it? They used to call them Phoenix companies, didn't they?
Yes.
They rose up the so it'd be, Marlborough Law 2024 because we dissolved Marlborough Law.
Yeah, and being in the area I'm in, sort of more corporate law and commercial purchases and things like that, you do that little bit of due diligence, and you're very advising the client, well, I wouldn't touch this with a barge pole because there's something going on here, and unless the seller explains themselves fully. So hopefully that can simplify that. It can remove quite a few of the frauds, and I'd say 90% of it probably isn't fraudulent. 90% of it is probably misunderstanding what the purpose of Companies House and using it properly as a shield to protect yourself and your business.
Oh, wait a minute. No, BBC Radio 4
Oh, really?
said
I'm wrong.
out of the 100,000 companies that were registered last year, 30,000 of them have been struck off. It's 30%.
What were they struck off for out of interest?
Well,
under the new act?
yeah, people were going back to Companies House saying, I didn't register this and it's come to my house.
Yeah, no, that's a real big one. And I think that's really become more and more prevalent since COVID, when we realised that there's various grants and schemes out there you can apply for with your fake company, and you can take that money and run.
So it is effectively, it's going to protect the consumer as well.
Yes.
So it's a good legislation that's come into place this month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think the emphasis on you proving that you're you shouldn't be too hard if you are you, I would hope.
But there's a lot of new money laundering stuff coming out, isn't there? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
It's getting more and more. I mean, I know the forms that we have to fill in for new clients. It's a horrendous form. You obviously have to give your inside leg measurement just to prove that your money, you haven't got a bit of money in the bank. It takes a long time for us to do as well.
That's my fault. I introduced a new money laundering form for compliance. And
thanks for that, Alex.
Yeah, I enjoy forms. What can you say? But it's a really unthought of part of what solicitors do. And we're not just there to protect your interest in the short manner of whatever transaction you're going into. We're there to protect your interest in a much wider way. We have specific duties regarding criminal use of money and crimes. So we may look as if we're pushing onto you an inordinate amount of paperwork, but it's there to protect you from buying that sham company, having dealings with that dodgy person who doesn't really own that house, and so on and so forth. And I think that's actually been quite prevalent recently, hasn't it? Sort of a conveyancing fraud. So I think this is a really useful bit of legislation. The fees are increasing, but I don't think they're increasing too much. I think it's reflective of what Companies House do. And I think it's going to be very useful for everyone in business to know they've got more sound of mind.
I don't think the fees are onerous. I think we've still got to have commerce in the UK. We can't. I'm sure the CBI will say something different, but we've got to keep going, and we've got to create new companies, and we've got to help entrepreneurs who want to do this sort of stuff.
It's clear that they're clamping down. There's a clear indication that Companies House are clamping down, and people need to act.
Yeah.
Whether it's you've a long-standing business that you may have moved address and they forgot to change the address, or it could be anything. It's worth seeking advice to make sure your ducks are in order, as they say, and rightly so, because if you don't, the consequences seemingly could be more damaging to not only you as a person but you as a business.
Yeah, and you personally, if you're a director and you've got directors' guarantees and stuff like that.
Yeah, very much so.
Or debentures. I don't know if they call them debentures now, do they? But charges on your property and stuff
debentures.
Like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because that's another thing. You could put a charge on a property, can't you? Or a bank could put a charge on your house if your house is a registered address for that company without you knowing about it.
Yeah, there are a number of things which you could be signing up to, and it's worth speaking to your legal advisor about what your address for service should be, what your registered address should be, and what the actual legal connotations are. It could be deemed that is in fact your place of business as opposed to just a postal address, and in that case it could be deemed that your property is a business asset. Now, whether that happens or not is a bit here and there, probably not. However, it can have more significant material impacts on things like your mortgage. You will be in breach of your mortgage terms. I can almost guarantee you, if your registered address for your business is your home and it's deemed to be carrying out business at that place, because the risk is they'll say, "Ooh, that means that our mortgage is not protected as we hoped it was."
Yeah.
Well, if you look at some of the clauses, some mortgages will not. You're not allowed to run a business from. It specifically says that if you look at a grade 2 listed or a grade 1 listed, there's specific reasons why the mortgagee will not provide funds, and it is in that clause in some instances. So it is worth taking the advice.
Yeah.
Because the loss is going to be so much greater.
Exactly. If it's your house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and the stress that it must cause.
Even a small business or a single person trying to set up a business and do business. So I think that's, to summarize in this podcast is, if anybody's got any questions or they've had any correspondence from Companies House about a company they may have registered, or they've got something in the land on their doorstep that they're not sure about, by all means seek us out and just have a chat. Or if you're thinking about setting up a company, come and see us, because we can do that. And at least it's done correctly, and that we're going to protect you for now and for the future. So thanks for joining me, chaps.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening. See you next month.